any sort of journey, you need clarity first before you do any sort of downstream tactical stuff. It'd be like, let's say you, Greg, wanted to build your dream house. Is the first thing that you do, you grab the 2x4s, hammers and nails and start building? No, like you need an awesome blueprint. You need a plan where you say, hey, this is exactly what I want to do.
Hello and welcome back to the Connected Mindset Live. I'm your host, Greg Tomczyk. Another beautiful day to be here with you guys, bringing a very special guest, Mr. Bob Wheatley. Welcome to the show. How's the morning going?
What's up, Greg? Good to see you, man.
Good to see you as well.
Thanks for
Bob
having
and I, my pleasure, man. Bob and I played professional baseball together. He's put some incredible things out into the world. We're going to dive into all that throughout this episode. But one of the things that we're going to highlight in this show today is we have to kind of figure out what our heart's desire is before we can build or tell a authentic story to the world, which could be through our personal brand, through a brand that we're building with a company. And Bob wrote the book on our heart's desires. So Bob, one of the ways I want to start the show is, how did you kind of uncover your heart's desire, and what is that heart's desire to you today?
Yeah, I see what you did there. So the book, essentially, what I did is, I'm a Christian. My faith is a big part of my life. And so the book is essentially the Bible through stories. It's through pop culture. So I'll talk about The Matrix, The Hunger Games, Saving Private Ryan, stuff like that. The basic premise is we keep repeating these same stories in Hollywood because there's a specific story that's written on the human heart. And so when it comes to personal branding and business and stuff like that, that is truly the first step in any sort of journey. You need clarity first before you do any sort of downstream tactical stuff. It'd be like, let's say you, Greg, wanted to build your dream house. Is the first thing that you do, you grab the 2x4s, hammers and nails and start building? No, like you need an awesome blueprint. You need a plan where you say, hey, this is exactly what I want to do. This is what I want things to look like. And so going back to your riff on the heart's desire, what I believe and what we teach at Brand Builders Group is that every individual human has individual good works that are prepared in advance for them. There's going to be specific things that make you angry, specific things that make you cry, specific things that make you laugh or make you excited, things that Greg loves that Bob does not. We're different humans. And what that means is we're meant to serve different people. And so a big mistake that a lot of people make when it comes to their business, they immediately jump into the marketing and sales tactics. They get so excited that they print the t-shirt, they build the website, they start knocking on doors, they cold call people. Meanwhile, they don't have clarity. So when they door knock, somebody comes to the door and they say, hey, here's my whatever widget. They're not crystal clear on what they're selling. The value is not there. No transaction happens, right? So we just always begin with clarity. At Brand Builders Group, we call it finding your brand DNA. You alluded to it as the finding the heart's desire. It's the same idea, right? We just need to know, who are we? Who are we serving? What problem do we solve for the world? If people pay you to solve their problems, you need to understand on a heart level, what problem do you solve for the world, Greg? Mm-hmm. So that's where we always have to begin when it comes to a business.
Yeah, I love that. I think that inside out, that internal work is so important before you broadcast it to the world. We did a study on the transcripts of this show up to this point, about 70 episodes in. And the one most impactful and most used word was clarity. And I think a lot of people are seeking clarity in the external world, and then they forget to seek it internally. And that's where that disconnect you're talking about happens. Where do you think that folks who feel like they have a little bit of that brand DNA figured out, like where do they go next to start thinking about building that blueprint for the house and then putting it out to the world?
Yeah, there's two things I'd say. Number one, we always teach our clients to give yourself a little bit of grace. Like we actually have a process that's called finding your brand DNA. It's like an 8-hour workshop. And what we always say to our clients is at the end of that workshop, number one, you're going to be excited, but also somewhat frustrated. Why are you frustrated? Because it's all ethereal. It's all just, your feet are not on the ground bringing it to the marketplace yet. So we always tell our clients, get like 80% confident on that brand DNA, 80% confident on that clarity. The other 20% is going to be found through trial and error, right? Because once you, going back to the house analogy, let's say you have that blueprint, right? If you give yourself permission to be 80% confident in that, you're going to learn some stuff when you're actually building the house, right? You're building a house by the ocean and you're like, hey, I thought we needed this certain kind of paint. Then you realize, shoot, there's a lot of salt in the air. We need to adjust the paint. That 20% grace that you give yourself is just, it allows for the flexibility. Second thing I would say is, and this is a BBG ism. This is a brand builder's bumper sticker. We always say, you are most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. You're most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. And so what we always teach our clients is if you're struggling with clarity, we need to get introspective. We need to look into the past. And that doesn't mean it has to be a cry it out therapy session, but if you're powerfully positioned to serve past versions of you, we need to ask ourselves the question, hey, which version of you are you speaking to right now? Is it Greg, the baseball player? Is it Greg, the first time dad? That first time that you saw your child, right? There's a bunch of different past iterations of Greg. However, we still need clarity, right? You could be speaking about cyber, parenting, baseball. That's all over the map. Greg needs to decide today, hey, who am I serving? What problem specifically do I solve? One shortcut, one hack to get there is looking at the past versions of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I think that's when people are out in the world creating something and it's almost like that ease of creation and it's just being carried out because what's driving them is a problem they wish somebody solved for them, years ago. That was kind of my light bulb moment when I, had the cyber attack, but didn't realize until 3-5 years later that that's what qualified me to sit in a boardroom and be able to build trust with executives because I wish I understood a concept that all of them didn't understand yet. So it's kind of bridging the gap, and that's creating value for them. And that just hearing that, kind of that past version of yourself, as opposed to just stuffing away the past and thinking about Greg wants to be this in 20 years, then reverse engineering that. Who knows where the path would have taken me if I didn't kind of do that introspective work in order to get there. And I think that's something everybody needs to do periodically to get that 20% adjustment once they feel that they have the 80. But I think a lot of people listening in are probably trying to get to 90, 100% before they release it. And it's kind of that creative block. How do you guys help folks kind of get through that once they have that brand DNA and then all of the things, websites, speaker decks, all of these things they have to create. How do you help them kind of push through the barrier to get it out there and then learn the lessons?
Yeah, it's so funny, Greg, because personal branding and really business as a whole, while there are mathematics, economics, stuff like that, it is truly an art. There's no like specific 2 + 2 = 4 when it comes to a personal brand. It's fluid. It is an art form. And so the person that is the quintessential perfectionist where, hey, I will not move forward until I'm 100% confident and this is exactly right. That's the person whose book never gets written, whose podcast never gets released, whose website is always under construction.
Yeah, right.
And so it's just so funny because the world is always adapting, right? So if you have that website that you're tweaking, you're going from blue to purple, and it never goes live, 6 months from now, the world is going to be different. And then you're still at 99%. So yeah, I think that is a muscle that can be worked if you become a person of action. And that doesn't mean you don't do it with planning, right? But if you become a person of action, a person of courage, you're okay with, hey, I don't know how this journey is going to end up, but I am going to run it. Mm-hmm. And so we just always we want to give our clients the tools to get them to that 80%, 99%, whatever they need, but also to give them the encouragement saying, hey, it won't be perfect. I promise you that, but it will get better.
Yeah.
We got to start somewhere, and then step by step, day by day. I mean, look at your career.
Yeah.
Look at what you're building, right? You're 70 something episodes into the show. I'd imagine whether it's the back end technology, the stuff that people don't see, or even just your comfort on camera, on mic, you've gotten better over 70 episodes. That can't not happen. It's just reps.
Yeah.
So yeah, the way you wouldn't get to your 70th episode is if you didn't have your first.
Yeah.
You just got to have the courage to do it sloppy. Who cares? Send it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all good.
Yeah. I think we know that extremely well as athletes, because we always had to push ourselves a little bit beyond what was comfortable. And then once we got into the uncomfort, this wasn't as bad as I anticipated. So I think that mindset really helps when you kind of feel it. So we got to find some way to put ourselves in that position. This could be a good way for people to start if they're passionate, about their brand or the brand they're building through their company. I want to take a quick step back, because I know there's a lot of things going on in the personal branding world. You have kind of social media influencers, you have, TV stars, you have, different areas of personal brands that have been dictated as like the way to do it and the way not to do it from like a PR and that standpoint. How do you guys define what a personal brand is at its core? Is it what people know about you, what they say about you? What is kind of a personal brand at its basic level?
Yeah, it's a great question, because sometimes when people hear that word branding, it's totally scattered. They go in a million different directions. One person hears brand and they think a logo, right? You got the cool little GT that's like meshed together. You got the red and black coloring. That's a brand. That's Greg's brand. It's not that person is wrong. That's just a half truth. The other half that we kind of ascribe to is we define a personal brand as a reputation, right? What do people think when they think about you? So when you're a business, being awesome, like having an incredible widget, an incredible service, but being the best kept secret doesn't help you, and it doesn't help the people that you're serving, right? You're hidden, nobody sees. So the way that we define a brand, that reputation, what people think when they think about you, when you think about the brands and businesses that are serving a lot of folks, they're truly on a first name basis with the world. Like I can say Oprah, everybody listening is like, oh yeah, duh, I understand, right? It's magazines, television shows, huge social media following, 30 years of credibility. You can't snap your fingers and become the next Oprah, right? However, one thing that we teach our clients, you do not need 1 million followers to make $1 million. So sometimes when it comes to social media and the branding world and stuff like that, people are really chasing the vanity metrics. They're saying, hey, how can I go viral? How can I get more? How can I build the platform? Meanwhile, they have 1,000 super fans that they're not talking to. So our methodology is really to get hyper focused on those 1,000 people. And it could be any number. I'm just using it as an example. Let's get hyper focused on your super fans, on the people that you are made to serve. You're most powerfully positioned to serve those 1,000 people. Don't be chasing the people on TikTok or the corners of the internet and hoping that they follow you. They may or may not follow you, but they're not going to pay you. They're not going to work as a client, right? Find your client, serve them on a super deep level. So that sometimes is kind of a coaching point that we have with our clients, where it's like, hey, let's say somebody comes in, they have 6,000 Instagram followers. Good start, but definitely not an Oprah Winfrey platform.
Yeah.
That person with those 6,000 might be able to move mountains if they have the right business model, right? Somebody coming in with 6,000 followers, when they connect with us, are like, hey, I'm a nobody. Like, we're kind of just getting started. It's like, no, you could have an awesome business today with that. How do we serve those 6,000 on a world-class level? Let's start there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that, quality over quantity. And that's one of the areas I wanted to dive into, because I'm a big measurement person. When I think about, how am I measuring that I'm making progress, because sometimes my self-worth is linked to progress just from baseball and growing up in the family that I grew up in, and just how I shaped rewarding, like rewards that come, that when the reward hits me, I like feel good about it, and it lasts long, from a fulfillment standpoint. And I think there's a lot of people listening in that are measurement kind of focused. How would you say, and you mentioned it there as well, how do you measure if your personal brand is doing well? Is it always revenue? Is it people referring you over? I'm sure it's kind of all the above, but how do you guys measure success of a personal brand that you're working with?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a cookie cutter answer for every single client that we have, because we have 900 clients today. So somebody would come in with a different goal based off of their specific business. So we have some clients that would measure it with followers. We have others that would measure it with revenue, stuff like that. We have others that maybe they just sold their business, right? They're doing great money wise. They could retire right now, but instead of living on a beach or living at the golf course, they want to serve people. So for them, the measure of success is publishing the book that they've been thinking about for 20 years, or doing the TED talk that they always said they would do, but never got around to it. So that's truly a it depends answer,
Yeah.
but it's the best I could do for you. It truly just depends on the client. They define it. What we would do is we help them get to whatever measure they're tracking.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. When it comes to, I think one of the things that most people with a well-established personal brand do is they have multiple avenues that they spend their time and energy. Like maybe they're speaker, author, and podcaster, or they're an author and they write blog posts, and they kind of have different. There's so many avenues you can express your personal brand through. Do you see any of those specifically being more beneficial than others when somebody's first starting out? Maybe they've run a company for 5 years, they have a general network, and they're trying to get beyond that kind of first order network into kind of deeper referral networks and different crowds. Any light to shed there?
Yeah. So one trap that people can fall into when they're just getting started is they want to be all things to all people, which, specifically to answer your question, that means they're on all platforms. Hey, I heard TikTok's blowing up, I should probably do that. It's like, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe your person is not on TikTok. Maybe you need to be a LinkedIn person. And so by sharing that with the client, there's somewhat a sense of relief. You kind of like exhale, oh, good. I'm not much of a dancer. I didn't want to be the TikTok person. I want to be on LinkedIn because I'm a business person, right? I wear a suit and tie to work or whatever. So one thing that kind of frees people up is this understanding where you don't need to be all things to all people. You don't need to, because it can feel super overwhelming on just how many platforms there are, right? Oh, I want to step into personal branding, or let's say I want to take my brand, my business to the next level. What's on the menu? Well, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Snapchat. Do I want a YouTube channel? Do I do a TED talk? I also want to be a paid speaker, and writing a book takes a long time. There's so many things that you can do. And going back to what I shared on the front end of the call, again, our finding your brand DNA process, part of that is clarity for sure. Who am I speaking to? What problem do I solve? A huge part of it, though, is the business model. It's the calendar, the prioritization, right? If there's 24 hours in a day, we don't want you to be so diluted, so spread thin that you're not able to serve your people well, right? If your people are on LinkedIn, every second you're spending on TikTok is literally time wasted. And so you're just spinning your wheels there. It's like, oh man, but I thought TikTok was such a good thing. And I've had friends who have blown up there and they got 300,000 followers now. And why is it not working for me? It's like, maybe the business universe is telling you this is not fruitful. We need to course correct. So a big part of when you're starting a personal brand, or even when you're kind of in a reset, a pivot point like that, it would be, let's get clarity even on how we spend our time, right? Laser focused is going to be much better than sort of the shotgun approach, because you'll be super spread thin if you do that.
Yeah. No, it makes complete sense. And it's also energy management, because I know
Yes.
burnout's a big thing when you're building anything, and you kind of reach those unclarity points, throughout do I do the speaking event, or do I write another chapter of the book? Like trying to balance all those things. I know people can burn out in that fashion. So knowing that brand DNA and what's going to be the biggest bang for that time and energy, I think is critically important. Is that a part of the brand DNA, finding your brand DNA process, or is that a next step when it comes to the BBG roadmap?
Yeah, with us, it'd be part of that brain DNA. So it'd be part of that initial 8-hour coaching session. We start with clarity, problem, audience, stuff like that. But then also we call it the golden grid. The golden grid is, what is my primary, secondary, ancillary focuses? Everything else, I'm going to trim the fat, right? It's just competing for my time. So getting crystal clear on what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it can be tricky for somebody like you, like me. I'd imagine a lot of people that are listening to your show, whether they're athletes or just type A business people who want to succeed, right? That is very much the American ethos. Like, we get after it. And
Mhm.
so if you come into a project and say, you know what, I always succeed, I'm going to make this happen based off of past experiences, that might be true. However, when you mention burnout is when reality speaks up to that person, says, hey, you're not undefeated.
Yeah.
Like, that there, we do have to somewhat put a governor, or put a plan on this business. So in a very Stephen Covey way, begin with the end in mind. Let's just think, hey, what's the game plan here? Is it realistic for you to release a 2-hour podcast every day this year? Probably not.
Mm.
Probably not. But you can do something. Let's do that something. Let's move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we're all on different paths, but there are, success leaves clues. I think there's clues and tools along the way. And I know the tools that you're talking about have really helped me get clarity, because, getting out of baseball, you're like, oh, I'm the baseball player, I'm the, family person, and I'm trying to build a business over here. And you're like, you're trying to sell it all to all people. And they're like, well, what are you? And so trying to figure that out. What was the biggest light bulb moment when you were building, writing your first book and kind of thinking about building your brand? Because I know that's how you came across Brand Builders Group, because you were somebody that needed those tools. What did that kind of light bulb moment or light bulb couple moments look like for you when you were building your brand?
Yeah, so I'm in a slightly different position from where you are, Greg. You're building a business. For me, it was much more of a passion or a ministry. So
Mhm.
I've always had a full time job. I have a full time job today. So the way the timeline unfolded, it was right at the beginning of the pandemic, probably 2020, that year, and I was actually working at a different company. I was working in sales for a military relocation company. Greg, I know you're a military guy, being in Virginia, so you totally understand.
Yeah.
Military families, they PCS every 2 to 3 years, right? It's a permanent change of station. So they're going from 32nd Street Naval Base in San Diego to Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Why? Because the government said so. What I was doing is I was helping those military families to connect with realtors, lenders, hotels, stuff like that. Because you could imagine, if your life gets uprooted, right? You get your orders issued, and then you have to move in 90 days. It's a lot of stuff. And so what I was doing was making those connections, and I love what I did. It was, it was something that I felt very patriotic doing. But in the meantime, I discovered this passion for writing and for stories. And all of a sudden, fast forward, I woke up and I had a 51,000 word document on my computer. It's like, shoot, this might be a book. And so I was at the outer limits of my ability. I didn't know, and the book was very sloppy. It was not good. It should not have seen the light of day. I needed help. And I knew nothing about the world of books. Like, do I need an agent? Do I self-publish? Do I hybrid publish? What does that look like? So I started just putting out little feelers. You tell friends and family, hey, I'm thinking about publishing a book at some point. I eventually had a friend that told me about Brand Builders Group. He had just listened to our podcast, sent me a couple episodes, scheduled a free call, and then I ended up joining as a client for probably 6 months. And then I was having such a good experience as a paying client that I literally asked the team, hey, can I work for you? I want to be around this all the time. And I loved what I did on the military side, But again, just that passion, that underlying, hey, why am I on this earth? What am I built to do? And I love to write and I love to speak.
Mhm.
So I wanted to be around people that are doing that 24/7, 365. And that was Brand Builders Group. So yeah, I started really just as one of the hundreds in our community, but we're here in Nashville, Tennessee. I would literally walk to our in-person events. That's how close the Brand Builders event space is. So it was just truly a match made in heaven for me. And I joined the team officially about 3 years ago, and I haven't looked back. It's been awesome.
Mhm. Yeah, I've definitely seen the growth, and you brought me in, and very appreciative of that. And it's just an amazing community that continues to grow. And it's still early on in the personal branding kind of curve of growth. I feel, and you guys are right on top of it, and it's a real honor to be a part of the community. One of the things I know a lot of people are thinking, and I get this question a lot when people start to ask me about how I built my personal brand is kind of the balance between creative outlet and business. I think a lot of people start to build a personal brand maybe because they want a creative outlet outside of whatever they're doing day to day, or they're trying to find a way to create more value for people around them, and it's kind of a creative outlet, and then it becomes kind of a business structure at some point in time where they're charging money, they have to collect invoices. Have you guys seen anything from a good way to think about what's kind of a side gig creative outlet versus what should be more of a business focus kind of life, something that supports your life, that you can do full time, and kind
Yeah,
of differentiating between those?
yeah, it's a great question. So obviously, it's going to depend on the individual family situation, right? If you need 5,000 a month to keep the lights on, that's sort of, all right, that's what I have to clear from my personal brand in order for it to officially be my business versus just an ancillary side hustle. I will say this: we do see a lot of people who don't know enough about how to monetize their brand, that they put in all of this sweat equity in their, they post every day for a year and stuff like that, and they make $0. That's super frustrating. And that's not because the value isn't there, it's because the business mindset, the business acumen is not. So it's, how do we blend together those two conversations? The art form, the service, the creative outlet has to be there, because that's why people are coming, right? They're coming to be entertained and encouraged, stuff like that. But also the business side has to be there as well. And we work with nonprofits, we work with people who are already multi-generational wealthy that don't need the money. But the more money your business has, the more people it can serve, right? If your business is extremely healthy, it'd be like just like a human being, right? If a human being has a lot of money, then in theory, that human can give a lot of money to charity. Doesn't think twice about giving money to the person on the corner, right? Because they themselves are in a healthy place. It'd be the same with your business. So we actually use an acronym within our brand DNA process. I'm happy to give it here on the call. So when it comes to monetizing a personal brand, there's only 5 ways. There's 5 buckets that you can choose from. And if you're listening to this and you're feeling a little stuck on how do you monetize, this might be a good way just to see the landscape as far as what's available. So it's sort of a punny way that we go about it. It's 5 letters. It's PAIDS, as in, how do I get paid in my business? So there's 5 ways that anybody can monetize a personal brand, just 5. The P stands for products. So examples of that would be a clothing line, a cosmetics line, protein powder, right? It's something that you can hold in your hand, physical products. A stands for ads and affiliates. So an ad would be like a podcast sponsor, right? This podcast is brought to you by Jack Link's Beef Jerky. That's an ad. An affiliate would be more of, you have a big audience on social, and then that affiliate is sending you a kickback. Hey, use promo code TomChick15 for 15% off this Peloton bike, right? That's an affiliate. The way that you make money in the A bucket, you do need a big audience, right? If Greg has 12 followers on Instagram, sorry, Peloton's not going to call you, right? You need a big audience. Same thing with the ads, right? If you have a handful of people that are listening to the podcast, Jack Links is probably not going to call. Mm-hmm. Now, I in paid stands for information. That's just saying I'm an expert in this specific field. Here's my paywall. Do you want my information? So there's really two ways that you can go about that. It's either static information, which would be like a course, right? A course is something that you record, you build, you do it one time, they pay $1,000 and they have it for life. That's a course. The other way that you can do information is more of a dynamic, something that's being constantly updated. So that would be like a membership, right? They don't pay you $1,000 one time. They pay you $20 a month every single month. So if you have a membership that's $20 a month, that's kind of a low ticket deal. But if you have 1,000 members, you're making 20 grand a month automatically, right? But you have to have the information that would allow 1,000 people to say, yeah, I'll pay Greg $20 a month for this. This is worth it to me. D in PAIDS stands for deals. So that's book deals, television deals, stuff like that. The D bucket, very similar to ads and affiliates, you typically need a big audience, right? If you have a small following, you're probably not going to get a book deal. You're probably looking at going self-publish or hybrid publish. If you're Barack Obama, 100%, you're absolutely going to get a book deal, right? HarperCollins or whoever is going to pay Barack Obama $2 million for the right to the next memoir or whatever it is. So that'd be deals. And then S, final thing in PAID, stands for services. That is where most people begin because it is the fastest way to cash. So a service, just to keep it super easy, is anytime that you're trading time for money. So examples of this: one-on-one coaching, you're obviously trading time for money.
Yep.
Even group coaching, right? Because you're still on the Zoom call or you're still in the room. Public speaking, right? You're traveling all over the country. You can make a lot of money very quickly, but you have to travel. You're away from kids and stuff like that. So what we do with our clients as a part of that brand DNA process to answer the question, hey, how are you going to make money? Is this going to be a side hustle forever? If so, where's the money coming from? Do you want this to be your livelihood? Do you want to be making $10,000 a month as a personal brand? If that is the case, cool. Let's kind of reverse engineer. How are you going to come up with $10,000 a month? Right? Is that 10 people that are buying your $1,000 course? Is that 10 people that are paying you to coach them $1,000 a month recurring? We just need to make these decisions. So going back to what you said, we need to talk to both sides of the business, the art form, the creative outlet, but also dollars, cents, math, right? We need both of those things to make it happen.
Yeah. So it's more of a blend than a balance. I think that's important for folks, because I know a lot of people, they have this fire, this passion for that creative outlet, and then the business wall hits and they're like, oh, I don't want to go over that wall. I'm going to stay on this side and use that as a creative outlet and use work as something else that supports the creative outlet.
Yeah.
But I just see a lot of people torn, and they're going back and forth continuously, like, oh, I want it to be a business because I need it to survive, and it's their passion. And then maybe it's not clear enough for them and they need to kind of go back to the drawing board potentially. But I see that in the entrepreneurial world so much. They're not able to validate it as a business, but they want it to be a business. So I think, clarifying the how do I monetize this, that was extremely clear. And I think people think about those in such silos, but being able to bring it all together and say, I need to do one of these to make money off of this. And that's kind of the art form that you hit on earlier.
Well, Greg, it's also understanding the pros and cons of each of those 5 buckets, right? You have a lot of people who really just want to travel the world and be a YouTuber. And there are those people. However, if you're going to make money in the ads and affiliates bucket, you need a big audience, which means it's going to take time. That's just the way it works. So you can't quit your 9 to 5, your income goes to 0, then you travel to Thailand and you start making that same 6-figure income or whatever you walked away from. It's having the understanding of, okay, great. If this is your vision, awesome. We need to get this snowball rolling downhill. This is not an overnight thing. So it's like anything, right? We are afraid of the things that we don't understand, whether it's the first time you pick up a golf club or do downhill skiing or whatever it is, you feel super uncomfortable. For that person who's more of the creative, who feels uncomfortable turning it into a business, they'd be shocked how easy it is with the right information. It's just like downhill skiing, right? You start on the bunny slope, you get comfortable, and then you slowly progress. It's the same idea, like anything in life. We're afraid of the things that we don't understand. Then when you kind of peek behind the curtain, you realize, look, it's not that big of a deal. I just need some guidance to get me there. Yeah.
Yeah, that organization of information I think is critical, because we're in information overload all the time with doing Google searches and trying to figure it out. When somebody can lay out that blueprint or roadmap to say, here are the key decision points that make it tailored to you throughout the process, and we've kind of drawn out the road so you don't have to create the road as you go, which I think is very hard when you're innovating in any way. When you think about the best personal brands, because I know you guys work with some of the biggest brands in their individual worlds, how did they get the momentum I think that we all need? Because obviously there's kind of the green lights and there's red lights that come up throughout the journey, but what do those people do well that you've seen to kind of build that momentum? Because we know how important momentum is in sports or in business or in our personal lives.
Yeah, 100%. We work with clients really on both ends of the spectrum, in that people who are just getting started and say, hey, I need a game plan to go from 0 to 1. We work with that person. We also work with the mega celebrity person that's already, air quote, made it, right? Who just says, hey, I got a book coming out in 6 months. I want to hit the New York Times. Can you help? So for a lot of our celebrity clients, they might come to us and they're established. They're just looking for ninja specific guidance. For the person who is just getting started, we always coach this. A big mistake that they make is they look at the celebrity. They look at the person that they've been following, right? It might be an Ed Milet or a Gary Vee. He's big in the marketing space. They look at Gary Vee. They see everything that he's doing. It's marketing, crypto, baseball cards. It's all over the map. And so what they do is they assume, oh, that's the path. That's the path to success. So going back to your question on what do these successful people do, they don't start with a million things initially, right? Like, if you're listening to this, think about the people that you really respect and that you follow. If you do a deep dive on their story, I guarantee you they became known for one thing. Like an exaggerated example, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Sure, most people listening know who that is, right? Movie star, serial entrepreneur. He's probably a billionaire at this point. I don't know his net worth, but it's tequila. It's everything, right? How did he get his start? How did he become known? He was a wrestler.
Wrestling, yeah.
He was The Rock. He was Rocky. His dad was a professional wrestler. And so he came up in the wrestling space as the WWF at that point in time, became one of the most popular wrestlers there. He was doing that 365 days a year. The Rock was a wrestler. There was no tequila. There was certainly no Hollywood movies, right? He became known for that. Then how do you take it to the next level? You then add something new, right? I don't know what his first movie was. Let's say it was The Scorpion King or something. It's probably a big deal where it's like, hey, you got this wrestler, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, wrestling people know about him, but he's not a Hollywood guy. Then he does well in The Scorpion King. Then he adds in something else. Then he's in all the Fast and Furious movies. Then he's the highest paid actor in Hollywood. Then he starts the tequila company. And now he's in a space where he can do whatever he wants. So if we reverse engineer that story, you, the listener, need to find your wrestling.
Yeah.
You need to find your WWF. This is what I'm going to be awesome at. Don't worry about the tequila and all the glitz, glamour, the extra stuff. You need to be awesome at something. And until you're awesome at that something, it's going to be, I'm not saying that you have to become famous, right? Not at all. But the way that you succeed in whatever venture you're going after is through focus initially. It's not through a million revenue streams. It's focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you have to kind of just think about the basics of how the human mind works, and it connects like a name to a concept. And if it's like 6 concepts, it's hard to become a clear connection in the brain to like Greg cybersecurity or Rory branding, like just thinking about those simple connections. And that's kind of how that reputation momentum starts to get started on, oh, what is what is cybersecurity and why is Greg in cybersecurity? And then you tell the story and you kind of build some color in that connection, which I think help people say and associate you with that concept. And then you can use what you learned to create the tequila company and all those different types of things. But I think a lot of people, you're right, kind of have a diluted focus because they're looking up to the influencer with 10 businesses and they're like, I need 10 businesses now, and then I'll build all 10 of them at once, which is a formula for disaster, as we know.
100%. Like you're a great example, Greg. If I ever have an issue in cybersecurity, you are my first call. There's really not even a close second. Why? Because I know exactly what you do. Like I literally associate that word with you, cyber. That is what Greg is doing. I don't understand that world, but I know that Greg does. So that's the text I'm going to make. That's the phone call I'm going to make. So I understand roughly what you do, and I trust you.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you're getting my phone call, right? It's when you're confusing, when I can't specifically say that this is what Greg does, because if you're throwing in CrossFit stuff and you're growing a garden and you're also working in finance, I'm like, all right, love Greg, right? Former teammate of mine, kind of all over the place. He's not going to get my call when it comes to the cyber stuff. That's not what's going on. I know exactly what you do. You're an expert in that space. You're getting my phone call. That's the whole idea.
Yeah. I love that. And I think it's an important point that it wasn't always that way. So, it's not like you're born and you have this clarity. It takes a process, takes the tools. And, that's a lot of the benefits I've gotten from Brand Builders Group outside of just the network of folks that are doing the same thing you're trying to do, obviously in their own vertical, which I think is just, there's a lot of gold in those lessons. And we know that from athletics, when you can share with another pitcher, like, hey, I'm trying to throw this pitch. What did you think about when you were throwing it? You get that clarity and you try, 10 different types of pitchers' way of doing it. And then it becomes, that's how it's supposed to feel. And I think we need to use those lessons and relate them to some of the things we're doing on the branding side. Any other lessons you've, either life lessons or things you've learned through these people that you're working on their brand with, any kind of key threads or key themes that stick out for the listener to kind of take away?
Yeah, I think I always would have told you that as an athlete, I had been taught to persevere. And I do believe that's true, but it was a slightly different thing. It was very bravado. As an athlete, you are taught to take the hill, right? To be the person that charges forward. And if you work hard enough, the results will always be there. And in some sense, that's going to get the most out of you, right? And that if you're going pedal to the metal, you're giving it all you got. However, as life goes on and you get humbled enough, you realize that is not true all the time, right? We do have limits. There are only 24 hours in a day. So what I have learned is just to be more steady, have a game plan. And as a baseball player, you and I have both experienced, we are very good at showing up every single day, right? Football, you play one game a week. Baseball, you might play 45 games in 45 days. You just got to show up every single day. Mm-hmm. And so what I have learned is maybe to take a little pressure off myself. You don't need to succeed immediately. The book will not be written in one day, right? But if you show up every day and you write a page, or let's say that for some reason you miss a day, right? You're sick, you're tired, whatever. Who cares? Get back on the saddle, right? Get going again. So I would say I've kind of lightened up in that regard. I still have that athlete in me that wants to achieve and does want to take the hill and stuff like that. But it's the balance of understanding. You got to be a realist as well. Rest has to come into play. Mental health stuff like that has to come into play. There's just an overall like grace and peace that I've had to really learn, because in athletics, it's so gung-ho, which again, I don't think is bad. It's just incomplete. So I would just say, if you're listening to this and you're feeling a little discouraged because of a lack of momentum in the business, it's all right. Who cares? Life goes on. Sun will come up tomorrow. Just keep going bit by bit.
Yeah, kind of wipe the slate clean and restart the next day. I think that
it's gonna be fun.
That kind of keeps us going, and that's freeing too. It creates that clarity that we need in the moment versus being our own worst enemy and just putting ourselves down because we didn't progress that day or we didn't reach that goal miles an hour wise. I think that's that's so important for that continual momentum, that steady, steady wins the race, and that consistency is just so important. And a lot of times we give up right before it's about to, it's something's about to hit or people are about to catch on. We kind of give up because we didn't get that validation throughout that initial process that we were looking for. Excellent, Bob. Where can folks connect with you, find you, connect with Brand Builders Group, hop on a call with you? What would be the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, best place to, if you want to find me, it's just Bob Wheatley on social. My website, bobwheatley.com. If you want to end up making a purchase of the book, obviously I'd love that. That'd be awesome. But if you listen to the call and you said, hey, I am feeling kind of stuck on our personal brand, our vision, stuff like that, Greg, can I give you a link on my calendar to let folks book a time with me? We offer free consultations. It's funny, both Greg and I have booked free consultations with Brand Builders Group. Mine was about 4 years ago at this point. But yeah, if you guys want to connect with me, I can do a little bit of a diagnostic as far as where your brand is. And if there's an opportunity for us to help you, I'm happy to share what that would look like. So can we throw something in the comments or whatever, Greg? Just a link to my calendar?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll throw that in the show notes. We'll make sure it's in there. I know how valuable that call was for me to get clarity. It was a huge kind of lay everything out on the table and let's play with the pieces and see what it could be and get some clarity. So I know how important that was for me. Definitely connect with Bob. I'll put the link to the book in the show notes as well. Thanks for putting that out in the world. I know it's not an easy process to put a book out, and especially how thoughtful you're able to put it out. And I think it's going to create a lifelong value, a book. And this episode specifically, these types of modalities of content, they don't go away. People are going to be able to buy it for hundreds of years in the future. Maybe it's all digital, but it's good to hold the paper copy in your hand. Bob, always a pleasure to connect. Looking forward to continuing the conversation. Appreciate your friendship and everything you've done for me to help me better tell my story and build a more clear brand out in the world.
Greg, thank you again for having me. You're the man. Definitely appreciate what you're doing and look forward to reconnecting with you. Hopefully at some point in person. Would love seeing you again. And yeah, thanks again for having me.
Absolutely.